In July of 2022, the Pope will be visiting Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's hoped that this visit will be a moment of reconciliation with residential school survivors and victims of the Catholic Church's past actions. To accompany him is his security, tons of it. Fences will be put up, police are everywhere, and most of his itinerary will be kept secret. This isn't without historical precedent though, as in 1984, when Pope John Paul II was going to visit Canada, a crazed American decided he was going to either send a message, or he missed blowing the Pope sky high by about a week. September 3rd, 1984, 10:22 a.m. 150 passengers are queuing up by Gate 21 at the Montreal Central train station for Via Rail Train 31 to Ottawa. Suddenly, an explosion bursts from the row of lockers roughly 15 feet away. 50 people are seriously injured. 3 of them are tourists from France. Their last moments on Earth are a confusing mix of glass, smoke, and fire. Police rush to the scene and immediately begin their investigation. Via Rail assists as best they can and brings them a note that was delivered to the headquarters of Amtrak in the USA about a week ago. The note reads, 9:30 a.m., September 3rd, 1984. End of Unholy Vatican. Kill popes. Fry bloody papacy. First 18 popes died violently. Pope Leo issued the Tomos. First to die peacefully in his bed. Blood will be on your hands. Don't ignore. What's a Tomos? Well, police suspect that it means the Tome of Leo, which theorized that Christ had 2 natures. One was the human man, and the other the Son of God. It's quickly ruled out as unrelated to anything in the case. The letter went on to list a number of targets, but the Montreal police are mum on the whole situation, as to not incite panic. This bombing comes on the cusp of a federal election, and perhaps more poignant to the letter, a week before John Paul II is to arrive in Montreal. The Pope was going to take a train to Windsor Station, a block away from Central Station, and stay in the Archdiocese, again, not far away from the bombing site. Approximately 12 hours after the bombing, the police think they have found their man. Thanks to the Secret Service, who declined that they are involved at all, former American Air Force navigator Tom Brigham has been found in a Montreal rooming house mere blocks away from Central Station and is handed to the team for interrogation. Tom is an odd fellow who really enjoys writing letters. While interrogated, he plays his cards close to his chest and seems very friendly and accommodating. But, much like the Tome of Leo, Tom has 2 sides. One was the pacifistic, divorced father of 11 who despised the Vietnam War, wouldn't let guns in his house, and treated his ex-wife wonderfully. The other was a raving lunatic who had been in and out of mental hospitals 4 different times, sending unhinged letters to former classmates, news organizations, and heads of state. What ended up putting him on the Secret Service's radar in the first place was the time he stalked President Ronald Reagan. The longer the police detained him, and the more witnesses that came forward, the more they were convinced that he truly was the bomber. He had been spotted outside the station after the bombing, trying to talk to news crews. He thought that the time the bomb went off was numerically significant, and wanted a full interview. Then, more letters started to appear, getting more and more deranged the closer they were to the bombing date. Not only did he sign his name on a few, he even put his daughter's address on the back of one. Despite having no clear evidence that he made the bomb, they kept him detained until the Pope's visit had come and gone, just in case. The Montreal police were very sure they had the man. Tom was sent off to his arraignment. He was described as a war hero who survived a German prisoner of war camp, a model tenant by his landlady, and a repeat visitor and lover of the Central Station that was bombed. Yes, he was a bit mentally ill, but he was over that now, and to prove that he was mentally sound, Tom decided he was going to drop his pants in court to show how clean his underwear were. In his mind, would a bomber really have time to clean their clothes? The prosecution called for him to be psychoanalyzed to see if he was fit enough to stand trial, but unfortunately, the case continued much to their behest. If his wild antics weren't enough, the North American news couldn't get enough of him, and Tom loved the attention. He would relish being interviewed, and be followed by cameras everywhere he went, all while claiming his perfect innocence. But his fun was about to end. Yes, he was deemed fit for trial, but the police finally had some dirt on him. A fellow inmate had snitched on Tom, saying that in between bus rides to and from the courthouse and detention center, Tom had described and detailed how to make a pipe bomb. While the witness was being interviewed, Tom's smile disappeared, his head sunk, and he covered his ears as to muffle the sound of his case falling apart. Tom was found guilty by a jury of his peers to life in prison for the death of 3 and the wounding of 47 others. Post-verdict, Tom would make a desperate last appeal to the jury. He spoke of the cosmic forces that would bring the second coming of the Lady of Fatima to Montreal, right over Central Station. He also tried to convince them that a good-natured guy like himself could never pull off something like this. All of it fell on deaf ears. While serving his sentence, Tom would appeal it in 1989. While there were admitted flaws in the way the 1985 sentencing developed, the appeal had the same outcome. On February 14, 1993, Tom would die of a heart attack at the Santa Cabrini Hospital while he was in the middle of his second appeal. But did they get the right man? Oh, you didn't think there wasn't going to be a conspiracy, did you? Was Tom mentally unstable? Verifiably yes. Was Tom anti-Pope? He said so himself. But the real question is, was Tom a scapegoat? His lawyer, Jay Ruminak, thought so. In fact, he thought so strongly about his position that he hired a private investigator to follow up on some leads that he felt the police had ignored. Tom had told Jay about a conflict brewing behind the scenes between the Canadian National Rail truckers and the Canadian National Rail Police. According to Tom, the truckers had been stealing from CN and were fed up with the police's investigation. You're probably asking yourself, what evidence did Tom have about this actually going on? Frankly, none, but he wasn't totally wrong. The private investigator discovered through CN Constable Robert Smith that there was a man in his late 20s with shoulder-length blonde hair at the scene of the bombing on the day. Minutes before the explosion, he was spotted covering his ears and running. After the bomb, the same man was observed smiling and celebrating. There were also accounts of a man matching that description yelling, "Le pape est mort," the Pope is dead, before the bombing, but these accounts are spotty. Another CN employee, Mark Belleville, testified at Tom's first trial that he received a phone call on a private CN telephone line a few days before the incident. The man on the other end had a thick Eastern European accent and spoke French, a language that Tom supposedly didn't know. He mentioned that Central Station was going to be the target of a bomb attack. Some other non-CN related witnesses at Central Station do mention a 20 to 30-year-old man with long blonde hair who spoke fluent French with an Eastern European accent. He wore a sweater with the picture of the Fatima, and he wandered around the lockers for a few hours before the explosion. Did Tom's rambling letters fall into the wrong hands? Did the terrorists then use Tom's mental illness to cover their tracks? Was any proof found that CN truckers were stealing from the rail line? The answer to all of those is no, probably not. I hope the Pope's visit in 2022 brings the reconciliation and healing to the survivors of the Catholic Church's many past injustices. I also hope that the survivors of the 1984 bombing can rest easy knowing that Tom is dead and that the Pope has so much security nowadays, they definitely would catch something like this if it ever happened again. Thanks for watching.